Hi everybody, hope you're all doing well. It's Friday, so you know what that means. It's time for some Hamlet. As always, the monologue will be in the description below, so take a moment to pause me, read it, and then come on back. So, really quickly, I want to make a point out that this is our last Hamlet Friday. Our school year ends next Thursday, the 18th, and so there will not be a video next Friday. So, in honor of that, we are actually looking at Hamlet's first soliloquy. Now, remember, a soliloquy is a monologue that is performed when you are the only person on stage, and one of the major things in that is that you, as the character, must speak the truth, because there is no way that the audience can judge whether or not you aren't if you don't. So, while yes, Hamlet may be exaggerating, the feelings that he's saying are 100% true and honest feelings. Now, a quick little note about where we are. We're in Act 1, Scene 2. Now, Act 1, Scene 1 is when Horatio and the guards see the ghost, and Horatio makes the comment that they should probably tell Hamlet that a ghost that looks like his dad is floating around the palace. We start off Act 1, Scene 2 with Claudius basically giving a press conference about some stuff, which then transitions into Claudius and Gertrude talking to Hamlet about the fact that Hamlet is still mourning his father's death a month later. Well, more than a month later at this point, but not quite 2 months is basically what the monologue sets up. And Hamlet fires something back at his mother, she goes back at him. It's a very tense family moment here. And this soliloquy then kind of unpacks a lot of why this thing is happening and why there's so much tension between Hamlet and his mom, and it's because he completely disagrees with her decision to marry his uncle. He thinks she took a major downgrade. He makes the comparison between his uncle and his father as Hyperion to a satyr, where, again, taking a look at the references, Hyperion is a Greek warrior, hero, legend, and a satyr is a person who's half goat. Hyperion, obviously, in this case, is his father, the satyr being his uncle. And even later on, he makes another comparison, and he says that his uncle is no more like his father than he, Hamlet, is to Hercules, which tells us also something about Hamlet's self-opinion. He clearly doesn't think very much of himself if he, thinks that his uncle is so far below his father, and he himself is so far below Hercules. Again, if you know the reference, a half-god in Greek mythology. But it kind of sets up, this soliloquy sets up all of what Hamlet is for the rest of the play. It sets up his general disdain for his uncle and his mother's marriage, his general disdain for his uncle, period, and the kind of self-loathing that he goes through most of it. Because Hamlet does not treat himself well. He beats himself up a lot, mentally speaking. And we've talked about that a little bit, like, for example, the monologue we did last week where he's like, what the heck have I been doing when these guys are willing to die for nothing? Or a couple weeks ago when we looked at the players and he talked about how the player was forcing himself into more emotion than he could for his actual dead father. And Hamlet, again, like I said, he's beating himself up constantly throughout this play. So, that's part of it. Now, I will note that I have cut down the speech that we're looking at today significantly, so there's actually even more on his whole thing about his mother versus his mother marrying his uncle, where he really just goes to town on how she made a huge mistake and how she basically turned right around, because he talks about how, in the full monologue, he talks about how the shoes she had worn to follow his father's funeral had not even worn out yet by the time that she married his uncle. He mentions in a later conversation with Horatio how the meat that had been cooked for his father's funeral was used as leftovers for the wedding feast. Now, that may be an exaggeration, but still, that's how quickly this all happened in his mind. And, of course, all of that is too quickly in his mind. So, from the acting standpoint, we are really setting up the character of Hamlet here, because, again, he's starting to list all of the things that he's going to have issues with during the play, and he really is also setting up his own characterization here. So this is a very important soliloquy in the fact that It's the first of many times that Hamlet talks directly to the audience. It's the first of many times he is out on stage alone having these moments with himself and the audience. And so this is where you set up that relationship. This is where you as the actor have to think, how am I going to look and treat this audience? Are they a friend? Are they an enemy? Are they the person who I'm telling my deepest, darkest secrets to? You know, how am I interacting with these people? That's what makes this monologue so important. And for my take, the audience in Hamlet should be the confidant to Hamlet's own internal suffering, his own internal turmoil, where he is constantly going back and forth between what he should be doing and what he is doing and what should be right and what is happening. And the audience needs to be in on that, otherwise they're never gonna follow him. Because otherwise he's just an inactive, whiny kid for most of the play, and that, I don't want to follow that. So you have to make the audience trust you. You have to make the audience like you. Even though you're talking about really depressing stuff, you have to let them in and let them be your confidant. And so that's where I come in on these kind of monologues, is like, on this monologue in particular, is like, you have to get the audience on your side. You have to let them in. You have to let them know that they are there and you are directly addressing them. Because if you don't, you lose them for the rest of the play. So, here we go. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew. How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it, ha, fie. 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not 2. So excellent a king that was to this Hyperion to a satyr, so loving to my mother, that he might not beteem the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. Heaven and earth! Must I remember? Why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it had fed on, and yet within a month! Let me not think on it. Married with mine uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eyes, she married. O most wicked speed! It is not, nor it cannot come to good. But break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. And that, everybody, is Hamlet. To quote Horatio, "Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels send thee to thy rest." Have a lovely weekend. I'll see you on Monday for one final monologue. Bye.